All right. Hi, everybody. As we're getting started here, some people are still filtering into the room, but it's great to have everybody here. I just want to sort of orient a little bit what we're doing here in this session. We will be, this is a sort of a free-for-all. We can, we're here really to take questions. I have a couple of things to get started with. It's a relatively short session, so please don't hesitate to post questions in the Q&A or in the chat as soon as you have questions. And we'll actually, like I said, we'll get started with a few thoughts. Our concern here today, our topic is developing new AI tools for higher education. I'm being joined on this panel by Angela Wren, who is a lead user experience researcher at Course Hero, Cece Liu, who's the director of product at Course Hero, and Vipul Gangrani, who is the senior engineering manager at Course Hero as well. And I myself, vice president of academics at Course Hero. So it's really great to have everybody in here. We've got a good crowd. We've got a little over 200 people coming in here. So it's a really great crowd. Please, again, like I said, please use the Q&A to ask questions and or post them in the Slack. I actually just want to get started really quickly with a question for everyone, everybody in the audience, as well as our panelists. And that is kind of a reflective question. And that is, what are your biggest concerns and your highest hopes for generative AI and ed tech? And I'll post that question in the chat as well. But let's start actually just with Cece. What are your biggest hopes and your biggest concerns and highest hopes for generative AI and ed tech?
Okay. So again, hi everyone. My name is Cece. I'm a director of product here at Course Hero. Very happy to be here today having this dialogue with the educator community. So concerns for me, one of the big ones would be if Gen AI and AI were utilized for purely obtaining, say, a solution purpose, so that it could potentially hinder a user or student's actual understanding for the underlying concept, to a degree that if they cannot apply concept in the real world anymore. To me, that would be a big concern. I do have a long list of hopes with Gen AI, so I'll try to be brief here. But in my thinking is that Gen AI is here to supplement and augment the learning experience and actually can make studying more efficient. For example, it could be a guide on how to approach problems and tasks. It can help solve for cold start problems. Right? It can meet a student's specific study style and needs. And Gen AI can be powerful in gathering reference materials that maybe students would have otherwise had a difficult time obtaining. I hope that AI could also make learning, studying, practicing an easier, more interactive and fun process. And lastly, AI has the potential to serve as a good companion, helpful companion to help students stay ahead in their study journey. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cece. Vipul, do you want to share?
Yes. Thank you, Sean. Yes, it's a very interesting question, especially with Gen AI just coming everywhere. I think one of my biggest concern is just the lack of the confidence score that the Gen AI answers give you. There is literally nothing that says if this answer is good or bad. Which kind of works in both ways, because if it's a bad answer, it will do a really good job in making sure that you think that it is a good answer when it is not. And this distinguishing factor, or rather the lack of it, is what makes it very dangerous, because when you go to an educator or a tutor, you know that answer is accurate. Gen AI does not do that. So that's my biggest concern on how do we get around it. But if we are able to get over it and then try to fix that problem, that makes it a very good tool. And that's my hope, that one day we use it as a supplemental for learning in our learning journey, and not as a replacement to educators. So you're not going there just to get an answer, but rather to learn something more, which you might have missed in your classes. But yeah, those were my two main things. Thank you.
That's great. Angela?
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think we've already mentioned some of the, maybe easier to getting to the end answer, maybe less learning, less accuracy. But I think from my perspective, I actually have more hopes than I do fears, because with things that my colleagues have mentioned, for example, like speeding up the time when the students are like alone and stuck and have no resources. The AI is now personalized and able to help them. And that frees up time for like actual in-depth and critical thinking and engaging with educators. And I think that could potentially be an interesting area where, you know, maybe some of these shorter term questions can be answered with AI, but then the more bigger, meaningful, how does everything connect? Why is this important? Let's study together and critically think through this. I think that actually frees up more time for those human interactions that are really appreciated by students even still.
That's great. That's great. That actually kind of reminds me of a conversation a long time ago. And I'm going to bring this up just as an idea, but a long time ago, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who did her degree in recreation science, and we were having an argument about bread machines. Because I was a bread maker and I liked making bread, and these bread machines came along, and I was like, why do I need a bread machine? It doesn't do anything for me. I can do this. My product is better. Otherwise, I'm just dumping things into a machine and it's making bread. And why would I do that? Why would I give up my humanity to this thing? And that we went back and forth on this, because her argument was, well, yeah, but it frees you up to do other things. So if you want bread, you want fresh baked bread, but you don't want to make the bread, you want to be able to do other things, you can make bread and also do other things. I myself, the making of bread is useful for me. I enjoy it. It helps me. It's a relaxing thing for me. So I'll never have one. but that's sort of similar to what you're saying, I think, Angela, is there's this idea that the correct use of AI can actually help us do things that will otherwise take time from other critical thinking exercises we could be involved in. Or it can be sort of a starting place for getting us further along in our ideas. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea. I posed a question out to the audience here about how have you used AI in your classroom? And I would love to know from anybody in the room. And actually, you can feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand though first. So raise your hand, I'll call on you, and then we can unmute, because we've got almost 300 people in the room. So it would be great if we have anybody who wants to share how you've used AI in your classroom. I'm going to be that teacher who just sits here and waits. Oh, there we go. Herb.
Good afternoon. Welcome. I'm glad we're having this conversation. So yeah, been involved in this from the very beginning. And so one of the things that I've been using is Perplexity AI to help my students with research. Because with Perplexity AI, the thing I love about it is it has a limit to how much text you can put into it, but also it gives you sources where it found the information. And I challenge my students to go back and look at those sources and validate those sources. And then they can use those sources and cite those sources in their research.
That's a great example. That's a great example. Malda, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I am an economics instructor, and I actually asked my students to use ChatGPT for a certain question that involved a supply and demand graph. And as I don't know if some of you know, but ChatGPT, the free version, I'm not talking about ChatGPT 4.0, I think 3.5 is the free version, does not do graphs. So, or it does them, but it's lousy, so it's not the right graph. So they gave me the generated answer. It's a principles course. And I'm like, okay, so what do you think of this answer? So a lot of them said, yay, it generated the right answer and everything. Of course, those are those who did not do their homework, did not do their readings, did not do anything. And the other said, no, that graph actually does not look right. This is not how supply and demand looks like. And, there's no equilibrium here, and so on and so forth. So first, it shows you that the text that was generated is right, but that it does have its limitations. So you can test the student's knowledge with the use of those tools. So I think it's a great way to get them to think critically about everything that AI generates. That is not just, everything it generates is right. And it, as we mentioned earlier, it does so, it errs with confidence. Like it shows you that it's so confident that this is the right answer, And no, it's not the right answer. So
I love that. I'm going to remember that forever. It airs with confidence. I think that's fantastic. That's how a lot of people get ahead. It's by airing with confidence. So we can teach us that skill. Anne, you have your hand up too.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I lost the picture for a second. So full disclosure, this is not my assignment, but I am preparing and learning by coming to these different things for a presentation in the fall. And so we have a few of our faculty who are submitting assignments that they've used in the past. So again, full disclosure, this is not my assignment, but this is from a guest speaker for our presentation. What he's done, he is an anthropology professor, and he has asked his students to go to material in the textbook that is particularly difficult for them and take that text, put it into the AI and ask it to explain it or break down that complex information and explain to me like a 10th grader, or explain it to me like I'm 15 years old or something like that. And once they get that, they need to evaluate it. Of course, they've already admitted that it's something that is difficult for them. And then evaluate it and then start using it, figure out how to parse it out in study index cards and things like that. And so that was a way that that he has already used AI. Of course, I plan on, because I'm from business, I plan on doing something totally different, but I thought that might be helpful.
That's great. Thank you very much. We have actually a question, and I don't know that we can answer this directly necessarily, but question from Bill Summerald in the chat about sort of what materials Course Hero is preparing to help teach students about AI hallucinations and bias. And I think there's an interesting question in there, and I don't know that we're necessarily preparing materials to help with that, but I am curious in the development when we're working with AI products in-house, how are we considering AI hallucinations and bias? Like, is there something that we're thinking through as we're developing products? I would love to know to bring that out if we can.
Cece, you want to take that up, or I can?
Yeah, people go ahead.
Right. As we do more analysis, right, we are seeing this pattern of hallucinations. And so we spend a decent amount of time in the lab setting for designing the prompts. So one way to remove hallucinations, or not remove them, but make them go down, is by using the correct prompts. So we experiment with at least 10, 15 prompts in an offline setting in the labs to see what kind of results we get. Now, the good thing about Course Hero is we have a lot of question queries, right? So we know, okay, we have a good data set. And so prompt engineering is what we do to remove the hallucinations. And then, sorry, I forget the name of the first person who asked question, but regarding Perplexity AI, the citations. And so that is also that we have been experimenting that if there is an answer that is produced, let's see if we have a document that matches this answer, because then we are confident that this answer is the right answer. So these are all still in the works, but this will also help reduce the hallucinations to a certain extent.
And to be clear, for people in the room who don't know, and I may be one of those, a hallucination is?
Oh, sorry, by that one, yes. A hallucination is it's making a mistake, right? So if you ask what is 5 + 3, and then the Gen AI says, oh, it is 10. And there are reasons why it says it is 10. That is more technical. We can get to that if time permits. But there are a lot of questions where it gives us the wrong answer. It can either be because of incomplete question, the wrong context, or incorrect prompts. And what Coursera is doing, we're solving for all these three things. So we make sure the question is complete, it has the required context, and we are working heavily on prompt engineering.
That's great. Thank you. One of the I just saw in the chat someone say that I bristle when I'm told I have to change my communication to fit the preferences of AI. And I want to bring this up actually. Maybe Angela, you can speak to this from a user experience research perspective, but the idea that we have to learn how to put the right prompts in, right? We have to figure out how to communicate with the AI in order to get the responses that we want. And this is now something that's sort of being foisted on us because the technology, we didn't ask for the technology, all of a sudden the technology is here and we have to sort of deal with this. I'd be curious whether you have any sort of insight or thoughts about sort of how we work with that. This seems to happen a lot with technology. We kind of have to learn a technology as it suddenly appears to us. But I don't know if you have if any of the panelists have any thoughts, or really anyone from the room has any thoughts about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kick it off and also want to hand it to the room and Cece. Yes, how to kind of help people use this new system, and any system, especially something that came up so quickly, is definitely something that we're actively working on, of how to get people to show the right messages for them to continue with a conversation instead of just like empty state. So Cece, if you wanted to expand upon that a little.
Yeah, sure. I think this is where we're really experimenting, right? Trying to understand for each use case, a student come here for a different purpose in a different journey. What are they trying to here to do? What is a pain point they're having? How do we help them to that pain point, but without them having to know, okay, I need to do this and that, right? Instead of asking them to pull from them, we're trying to provide them more of a guided experience. So they know, oh, you could do this, here's something you can explore to get to learn this technology basically, versus asking them to do the work. We're here to help them. Here's this, now you can do this versus before you couldn't, right? That's the approach we're taking.
It is actually, I mean, that's really interesting. And even working here at Coursera didn't know that was the approach we were taking. I think that I've used ChatGPT. I haven't used it for any reasons besides just going in and playing with it and seeing what it generates. But it's interesting when you go to ChatGPT because there really are no instructions. It's really just put something in here, and it has a little bit of here, like a tiny bit of instruction, and then at the end it always says, just be sure, be aware that these may not be correct answers. These are some answers that are possible or some such. But that sort of education of people who are using the product at the point of using the product feels really important. And I think that a lot of times we are given technology that there's no sort of user manual for. We're just suddenly, there it is. I know that when I first started using, like back in the dinosaur ages, when I first started using Google, and people said, yeah, so if you want specific things, put quotes around it and then put a plus and put a blah, blah, blah. And there was all these different ways of making a search work really well for you. And no one told me that. I mean, Google didn't tell me that. I had to get that from people who were other users. So the idea of putting the education right in front of the user feels really helpful in a lot of ways. What I'd like to actually ask the audience, what sort of AI tools can you imagine? And I know that some people have been commenting on this very early in the session. People were commenting on this a little bit. What kind of AI tools would be the most useful for you? And I just want to put that up there too, that I saw some people say, what would be really useful for me are AI tools that help students understand how to use AI tools, that basically help us understand how to keep critical thinking in the mix. Herb, your hand is raised again.
So I don't know how many of you saw it, but the New York Times on Valentine's Day did a great little generator to help you create a Valentine's. And it gave you the options of creating it like for a coworker, for your spouse, or whoever, and also to create it like in the voice of a kindergartner, in the voice of a Shakespeare, or I keep forgetting her name, the woman from A White Lotus. So it gave you the parameters to help you construct your prompt, and then created a little like love note for whoever you wanted it for. And I, of course, did one for my wife in the voice of a kindergarten. It was really cute. But I think that's the model that I think that we will eventually get to, so that people who are doing certain types of things can choose the parameters that they want to use, what voice I want it to be in, what kinds of things I want it to look at, what kind of response I'm trying to get, and then it'll help you construct that, and then you can take that information and use it. That's what I'm hoping to see more of. And I don't know if that's where Coursera is heading, but that's the kind of thing I think would be very helpful.
That's great. I appreciate that. And I'm seeing a lot of responses in the chat that are actually really interesting, because a lot of them are about like a tool that helps non-native speaker English education, or sorry, non-native English speaker education, creating interactive activities, tools that are transparent, accountable, ethical, and a lot of this has to do with sort of how we teach. So I'd be curious, even more specifically, are there tools that you can imagine using that would be helpful in your teaching, that would help you either preparing for teaching or in your professional lives in some way? I'd be really interested to hear feedback on that as well. And feel free to raise your hand and speak, or add it in the chat. Mike, yeah.
I've put it in the chat, but this whole thing about process rather than product, I know people do that in lots of arts courses, photography. You have to show your process, and there are various tools around. I mean, track changes in Word is one. I mean, in theory, you could tell every student to switch track changes on right at the beginning, and then you could check everything they did in the document. And if you had a more universal tool that could process which AI you took. Now, I know you could create a video of it, but a simple tool that then allowed people to very simply capture the process of anything they produced, and that would get round the originality issue. Because trying to fake the process and reverse engineer it from an output produced by AI would take you more time than doing it in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, from a learning perspective, it could also be productive to work backwards. But I think that's a really good idea, and I think that's one of the big concerns, right, with ChatGPT, or not with any really AI, is that people will lose the ability to do the thinking themselves, right? That they won't know 1 + 1 is 2. They won't know how to write an essay, and this gives people, if you were able to have AI that helped you understand how your work was created, I think that could be really interesting. Other thoughts from the crowd? We've only got a few minutes left, so I actually want to then turn this to students. What kind of AI tools would you want your students to be able to use? I know that a lot of people sort of have the attitude of, I don't want my students using AI, but what if we were to say, what kind of AI could be created that I would want my students to use? What would you like them to have access to? Stuart, you're muted if you're speaking. Sorry.
My blunt, usual Jersey self. I've been teaching now for 23 years, and I've retired as an economist for the state of Texas. And as an academic, my assumption was it was our intent to impart knowledge to students. Okay. And as an economist, I always think we should do it in the most efficient way. It seems to me that with the knowledge that the universities have accumulated over centuries, Harvard was founded in, I think, 1636, that we should use that accumulated knowledge to disseminate it throughout the world. Think of the large language model that could be assembled with the lecture notes of the faculty from all over the world. Okay? That to me should be our objective. I hate this with the school district. I teach early college high school students. And the two districts I taught at both do not allow ChatGPT to be accessible from the Chromebooks they issue to the students. I'm thinking, schmuckos, why are you preventing students from getting knowledge? Isn't the intent of education to impart knowledge? And shouldn't we do it in the most efficient way? Okay, and then we as educators should come up with more creative things for them to do. If the acquisition of knowledge is improved, we need to come up with more insightful ways of how students should use that knowledge. I mean, this is not rocket science. This should be what every one of us was trained to do. So give me a break. This thing with all the students are going to do is cheat. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Don't you think they've done that for centuries? Did you not do it in high school and college? Did you not help somebody passing on an exam from your fraternity to the students who lived in your dorm? If you didn't, then you didn't go to college.
I'm sure that there's some folks who would not agree with that.
Give me a break, folks. Come on, let's get with it. Come on, think of positively. How do we improve the delivery of knowledge throughout the world?
Yeah, I think.
I mean, ask ChatGPT to convert your lectures to Klingon. It will do it in a New York minute or a Jersey second. I don't, So please think of creative ways. You are the creative class. Think of creative ways to utilize it. Jeez.
That's great. Thank you very much, Stuart. I appreciate.
You're very welcome. Thank you for letting me get it off my chest. It just is.
Of course, this is a good space for that. So thank you for your contribution. There's several other questions. I do want to be attentive to the time. We only have like 2 minutes left. So we can continue to hang out here a little while if people would like to. But I do want to make sure that people know they're free to go at the 10-minute mark. So Eduardo, do you want to show us out?
Sure, thank you. Well, educator from Mexico, and in my case, in my view, it's going to be a great chance to make material available for districts that they don't have a lot of resources. And in the other hand, there's also a way to help students to personalize the contents that they will study. So we are in the verge of super specialization of students in the early years, not waiting till college to focus more in what they are interested, but they will have a chance of gathering all the resources and materials that really are interesting for them. So for me, it's a great opportunity.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think it's an opportunity as well. And I think that we are the people who can take advantage of those opportunities and figure out what the opportunities are. I do want to share really quickly before too many people leave. Course Hero is going to be, if you've enjoyed the summit, we are also going to be offering something that we are right now calling AI Academy in the fall. It will be a 4-week course that will be community-led and inquiry-driven. So it's a very different sort of professional learning environment and experience. We'll be offering that in the fall. And I'm going to just drop a link in the chat for anyone who wants to express interest in it. At this point, we don't have registrations open, but if you would like to express interest in it, you can just hit that link in the chat, and we will make sure you are the first people to hear about it once it actually is open for registration. So it should be very interesting. We'll have some guest speakers. We've got a couple of really great teachers for it. So I think it'll be a fun time. So with that, I think I will go ahead and close out. I appreciate everybody's time. I really appreciate you being here at the summit. This has been a fantastic experience for everybody. And I think we're really looking forward to figuring out what we're doing for next year, because it's going to be even bigger. And I think that we just have to keep our ear to the ground about things like AI and what else is coming. So hopefully you'll all bookmark next June for, I don't know the dates yet, but probably in June for Ed Summit next year. So thank you so much. And I hope some of you will consider the AI Academy too. So that link again is right there. All right, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Great summit. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sean, can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course you can.
Well, it's more of just a curiosity. So I'm jumping in. This is pretty new to me, as I watched my senior daughter have ChatGPT write an essay about the parking lots at her school.
Oh.
And that really kind of threw me as an educator, like, oh my goodness, what is this going to look like in the future? I'm also a special educator. And so sitting here thinking, how can we use this to the benefit of our students who have disabilities and who have learning disabilities? And so I think that would be something, well, I know I'm going to look into, but I didn't know if you've had any insight into using ChatGPT or AI, I should say, to help our students with learning needs.
I haven't run into that before. That's because I work primarily in higher ed. I know that there's some, and I'm not an expert in AI at all. I know that there are some, there can be some problems with AI and the way that it responds to people with disabilities or neurodiverse folks, and the way that, people think differently, behave differently, interact with the world differently, but ChatGPT or another AI interacts in a very sort of algorithmic way. And so I think there's some concern with whether or not it can be nuanced enough to address the needs of different populations in that same way. But I'm not familiar with any platforms off the top of my head. Angela, maybe, I don't know if you maybe know anything, but that work specifically with special needs groups. I haven't heard, unfortunately, I haven't heard anything.
But that's okay. I just was curious, like for our students who have like, learning disabilities with like dyslexia or dysgraphia or things like that. I think there could be some real potential.
Yeah, I agree.
Sarah,
Mhm.
ask ChatGPT. No, don't lie. I mean, it's not.
No, Stuart, I'm laughing because I loved your little talk a while ago.
Ask it. The other thing to do, I found that there's this futuretools.io, which I call the Yelp of AI tools. And it has a quote from the 90s, if you remember the word plethora.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it has a plethora of AI tools that are available.
I'll check that out. Thanks.
Yeah, so
That's great. Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate that.
no, you're very welcome.
I'm not really the best possible resource for this sort of thing, but fantastic. All right, thank you again for everybody for coming. I'm going to have to close out, but great to see you all. Thank you so much for your participation the last couple of days. Really appreciate it.